Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third annual Coalesce Conference. My name is Ian Fahey, and I am an analytics engineer on the internal DBT data team, so kind of the most dogfooding you can possibly imagine. I'll be your host for today's session, developing on DBT Cloud, introducing the new Cloud IDE. But before we get started, there are a few things that I'd like you to know about my friend and our product manager, Nate Nunta. Nate grew up in Bangkok and lives in San Francisco, to which he attributes now preferring winter to summer. Around DBT, we like to say that Boss is Nate's middle name, and that's because Boss is literally Nate's middle name. That's still what his friends and family call him. Nate considers himself very food motivated. So if you have feature requests, make sure you bring with you a little Korean barbecue, maybe some fried chicken, bread, desserts. But be aware, Nate loves cooking and baking himself, so he might be returning the favor. But what Nate's really been cooking up with his team is a major upgrade to the DBT Cloud IDE. With a fresh new coat of paint, a rewritten code base, and a suite of oft-requested features, the new IDE should amount to a significant quality of life increase for all of your team, allowing you to deliver even more value for your business. Take it from me, an analytics engineer who used it yesterday to debug our own internal project on the floor of the conference. Or, as LeVar Burton would say, don't take it from me. Experience it in action and see how to safely distribute data development work in this hands-on session with the DBT Labs product team. A few last notes you're familiar with by now before we jump in. All chat conversations and Q&A will take place in Coalesce Developing on DBT Cloud channel of DBT Slack. This allows us the chance of connecting with our remote attendees tuning in from around the world. If you're not part of that Slack channel, visit community.getdbt.com and search for Coalesce Developing on DBT Cloud when you enter the space. If you already joined the Slack channel, please take a sec to introduce yourself and connect with other community members. Our chat champion hopefully has already dropped in an icebreaker for you to contribute to. And finally, all our folks here in the room, the New Orleans attendees, be aware that we're 30 seconds ahead of the online folks, so to the degree that there are spoilers in this presentation, give them a sec to catch up and contribute once the conversation moves on. So after the session, Nate will join the Slack channel to answer any questions so that once again our online attendees can participate. So without further ado, that's enough from me. Let's make some noise for Nate Nunta.
Hello. There you go. Hi. Welcome everyone to the Developing on DBT Cloud session. Thank you all for showing up, and thank you for joining us online as well. I actually don't know where the camera is. Somewhere. There. Hi. Hi, online community. We'll also be introducing the new Cloud IDE today. You've probably seen the keynote yesterday. There's a lot of talks, a lot of our sessions that DBT Labs teammates have led also use the new Cloud IDE. As always, as Ian said, join us on Slack. I will be following up afterwards to see if there's any questions about the product. Okay. All right, let's get started. Let me introduce myself a little bit. Wow, that's a giant face. So I'm Nate. I'm the product manager for developer experience here at DBT Labs. And what that means is right now my focus is the Cloud IDE and to make sure that you have the experience that you deserve. And as Ian said, born in Bangkok, live in SF. Prior to DBT Labs, I was a DBT practitioner for a year and a half and was using DBT a lot on building both locally and on the cloud, more on locally sometimes. And so before I get started, questions to the room here. Raise your hand, how many of you are DBT Cloud users? Okay, it looks like half. How about how many of you have used DBT for less than 6 months? Okay, and then how about more than a year? Okay, there's a lot of experienced users here. Cool, it's good to know. Good to know we have a varying degrees and level of experience here in the crowd. Let's get to our agenda today. There you go. Okay, so I'll go through big 5 topics today. a little bit on background on overview of the cloud and the Cloud IDE on how we got here today, and then demo and on the performance change that we have improved. And there's some words from our beta users that I like to share, and announcement of the new features, as well as the final demonstration of how this all comes together using dbt Cloud IDE to build dbt project. So to start on the first topic, so let's start with just stepping back. dbt Cloud, we have a lot of dbt Cloud users in the audience here. dbt Cloud should be the easiest way for you to use dbt. It is made of multiple things. There's a web-based development, or the Cloud IDE. There's a job scheduler. A lot of people use that. Metadata API, hosted documentation, as well as options for audit logging or security features, and so on and so forth. We're here today to talk more about the Cloud IDE. So to get us all on the same page, what is the Cloud IDE? So IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. It's really a common dev tool for engineers to use and to build their code all in one place. So dbt Cloud IDE in particular is one for you as analytics engineer to build dbt projects easily. It is made of three main parts. It's a code editor at its core, right? You can create and modify your files and edit the project as needed. It's also an integrated console, meaning that it connects to your underlying data warehouse, that allows you to preview your data and compile your code. It also connects to a dbt RPC server, which allows you to visualize the lineage and execute common commands like dbt build, run, test, deps, and so on and so forth. And finally, version control is a critical and essential part of analytics engineering workflow. And so the IDE connects to your Git provider, be it GitHub, GitLab, Azure DevOps, to track changes and collaborate with your team. All in all, though, the goal of the dbt Cloud IDE is to empower you to be in a state of flow for as long as possible. So that's what I like to think our goal. The more time you spend in the IDE where you don't get distracted or get disrupted by things, that's where our success is. The tool is really for anyone, right? Beginners and advanced users alike. And our goal is to make it more and more useful, uniquely for dbt, as much as possible. OK. A little bit more on history on how we got here today before we move on to changes and things that we have. So the Cloud IDE was launched like 3 years ago at this point by Drew back in January 2020 when the company was very, very small. This is when dbt was just becoming a thing. It enabled a new cohort of analytics engineers who's just getting started who know SQL to get started in this analytics engineering journey. Today, we have thousands and thousands of users logging in every week, from projects of 100 data models all the way to 5,000 or more models. So there's a big range of projects here, and the latter group have seen a lot of performance issues there. So, which brings us to a lot of the problem that the classic IDE has faced. It wasn't, given that it was built 3 years ago, it wasn't really built for scale. It was, users have been seeing a lot of issues around performance and reliability, which includes the startup time, loading up the IDE, many of you probably know, can take up to 5 minutes, if not much longer. Very frustrating. Interacting with it is also very frustrating. When you click save or when you click commit, you are stuck in this read-only mode for 10, 20 seconds, which very much disrupt your state of flow. And in terms of reliability, waiting for startup time sometimes doesn't always load up into a successful load, so you're just stuck in this infinite spinner, which is also very frustrating. OK, so what are we doing with it? The two changes that I want to bring up today, you've seen hopefully both already. One is the new Cloud UI. So this was a big change, and on its surface, for most of you, it's a reskin of the entire app. Right? There's a new design. We also modify some in-app navigation so that it's a little bit more intuitive. But behind the scene for us, really, it's much more than just a redesign of the dbt Cloud. It is the original dbt Cloud was built similar to the IDE 3 to 4 years ago when Tristan, Connor, and Drew were just building out the company, but which means that there's a lot of technology that is now outdated. So this is the first step for us towards a more modern experience. And it is a big foundation that helps us build more cool things and future capabilities. And to start, we'll start with the new IDE. So there's a screenshot of the new IDE. What's new here? It's performance and reliability have been a big focus. So there's a big improved performance and reliability in this new IDE while maintaining feature parity with the classic IDE. So the look and feel of the IDE should be very similar, but this is actually more performant and functional and more useful. And then because we took a step back and really rebuilt the app from the ground up, it allowed us for the IDE to use newer technologies, again, allowing us to build more extensions and more scalable product. It is set up for faster iteration and predictable work so that we can input things like ergonomic improvements and additional features that we'll talk about a little bit later today. Cool. OK, my one last slide before I go into a live demo that I'm very not nervous about. Performance metrics. So these are the 4 top-level performance metrics that we track ourselves against. I've shown this to folks in staging before, but the top 2 are what we call spinner time. It's the time that it takes for the IDE to load up. We break this down into cold start and hot start. The cold start is the time that it takes for you to load up the IDE the first time that day, while hot start is when you resume an existing IDE session, often within 3 hours of your latest activity. As you can see here, we have 3x the speed of cold start, from 2 minutes down to about 40 seconds. This is our P90 values. And for hot start, it has gone tremendously down, more than 10x, from 30-something seconds down to 3 seconds. You should be seeing that in a second as well. And then the bottom 2 metrics are what we call interaction metrics. One is time to save, so how long it takes when you click save before the IDE becomes editable and useful and usable. And time to commit is the same thing for when you make a git commit. We have virtually eliminated time to save, which is a huge plus for the IDE. It's like you can actually edit, save, and then actually do things. While time to commit, we have decreased that down to about 6 seconds. We're not there, I'll admit to that. Like, these metrics are something that we can still continue to improve, and that's something we'll work on more through the months. The biggest call out on this slide, though, is the sub point below where the classic IDE, all these metrics depend on the project size, while the new IDE does not. Meaning that the larger project you have, the more number of data models that you have in your project, the IDE becomes much slower in the classic world. In the new IDE, they no longer depend on that, so anyone with large projects should be able to use the IDE successfully. Cool. So with that, I am going to move on to an actual demo, live demo, of the performance metrics, the 4 performance metrics that I showed. Let me move my screen for a second. I realize I should have asked you this, but I think I got it. There you go. And there you go. OK, great. So what you are seeing here is a side-by-side, if I can find my mouse, there you go, side-by-side view of the left-hand side. I will show you the classic IDE, while the right-hand side, I will show you the new IDE. So I'll go through those 4 metrics. The first is time to startup time of cold start. So this is when the IDE loads up for the first time that day. And as during this time, we're provisioning an environment for you to use safely and securely. On the right-hand side is a new IDE. We have improved the experience a little bit, including the status bar, as well as some tips from our community team, actually. At this time, the reason that the new IDE, there you go, thank God, is faster is because in the classic IDE, you're actually re-downloading the contents of all your file. By the way, these 2 projects are identical, so I created some large project with, I believe, like 1,000 data models. And so in the classic IDE, you would have to wait to download all the contents of the files, while the new IDE, you don't need to do that. We simply need the file tree. OK, the next metric is spinner time for hot start. We'll do that by simply refreshing the tab. This is like resuming an existing session. Where is my mouse? There you go. In the hot start, I will just refresh this and refresh that. There you go. OK, this one I felt more confident about. The right-hand side loads up a lot faster than the left-hand side. Again, during this time, the left-hand side simply refetched all the content. It's not that bad, actually, in that round. All right, the next metric is our time to save. So I'm going to open up the same file. Oh, my goodness, if I can see that. Models, there you go. And dim parts. OK, I think those are the same identical file. On the left-hand side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some zeros here and click Save. So note that you're stuck in this read-only mode. You can't do anything on the left-hand side. While on the right-hand side, if I were to edit this and click Save, I should be able to edit more right away. Right? So it's a lot more snappier and a lot faster to use. OK, I'm going to do that again. There you go. Yeah. OK, and the last metric I'll show you is time to commit. So I'm going to make a commit in both using the same change. Put some thing in here and make a commit. OK, let's see. Both of them are loading. I'm hopeful this will return faster. During this time, we're connecting to your Git provider and actually make a commit. Again, this takes about 5 to 7 seconds for the new IDE, hopefully. There you go, while the left-hand side is still loading up. Again, not too bad. But OK, so those are the 4 top-level metrics. Thankfully, they all went as planned. I'm going to go back to the slide and present the next part. Actually, OK, so next up, the new IDE has been on beta for the past 2 months, and we have over thousands of users at this point participating in the beta program. So I want to thank each and every one of you if you've already in beta, as well as those online. I have asked a couple folks to share a few words about their experience about Cloud IDE. So with that, if you want to share, here you go.
Hello, I'm Ross Serban. I lead data engineering at NextBite.
I'm Ella Johnson. I'm a principal data cloud architect at Snowflake.
Anthony Chimbaris, Australia.
Felix Saranovic, and I'm a senior analytics engineer at Hard Rock Digital.
Frank Serafine, Veterans Advantage.
Martin Birch. I work at Heroes Technology.
Tim Napier, I work for Burton.
Dory Wilson, I'm a product analytics manager at Mux.
We've been using DBT for about a year.
For 2 years now.
For about 1.5 years now.
For about 8 months.
Since January.
Since the analytics team was created in spring of 2021.
Our team uses Cloud for all workloads of complex data transformations and enrichments. We also use DBT to build our accounting and regulatory reporting layer.
For our data model construction and running.
For collaboration and source code control. For preview and the data lineage capabilities.
DBT's Cloud IDE is our primary interface for developing in DBT. Everything's in one location. You can run jobs quickly and easily.
It's so much easier. It presents better when we do demos.
It's a more collaborative environment.
We use it for testing, building, and previewing our models. It's just more intuitive. It's faster.
It's hard to pick a favorite when it comes to the new IDE, but I'd say code completion is probably mine.
File management.
Being able to quickly test, and build the project by pushing the build button really easily.
Click and drag tabs.
Definitely the speed improvements.
The new design and how speedy it feels.
Cool. Thank you. So if you're in beta, thank you. Thank you so much. I think partnering with community members have been one of the highlights of my job here at DBT Labs. It's super fun to hear positive feedback and constructive feedback that you all have shared. OK, on to the next part of the presentation. I'd like to introduce some new features. Some of these beta users haven't even seen, really. I think Margaret has shared some of these yesterday already. We'll go through 5 big buckets. One is ergonomic improvements. We'll talk about dark mode briefly, autocomplete, diff view, as well as code formatter. So the first thing is ergonomic improvements. We break this down to 3 big buckets. One is navigation, organization, and execution. In terms of navigation, there's more ergonomic ways that you can interact with the IDE. The example you can see on the right, you can drag open files through the file tree. You can use a file picker to open files, as well as through the DAG, double-click on it, or through the breadcrumb. There's a pretty quick GIF. This presentation should be available online afterwards. All right, next one, organization. Different ways you can organize tabs and files in your project. There you go. So the first thing, you can drag and drop files within the file tree. You can organize the tabs up top, as well as closing multiple tabs by right-clicking, save multiple files. And there's a section for file changes on the top left, as well as a file indicator, the U and M for untracked and modified. And finally, on execution, there's the ability to preview and preview selected portion of the code. In this case, if we have a dummy code of 1 to 10, if we highlight 3 to 8 and preview it, you should be able to see just simply 3 to 8. There you go, 3 to 8. And we also introduced command palette for common commands within the IDE, as well as the build button, which allows you access to common DBT commands and invocations. There you go. OK, that was the first thing, ergonomic improvements. So on to dark mode. I know this is not a new feature per se. The classic IDE already has this, but it was not available during beta launch. And many, many beta users have asked me repeatedly when dark mode will come. So I'm here to share with you that dark mode will be available for beta probably next week. All right. Good, I'm glad. Up next, I'd like to invite my colleague and friend to join us to talk about the next 2 features that he's excited about and that he's been building behind the scene. With that, I want to introduce to you Isaac Luxford, who is our staff software engineer and has been an essential part of our development. I also recommend that you read his fun facts.
Hello, I'm Isaac. I'm from Stanford in Connecticut. The funnest facts I could come up with is that there is an Easter egg in the new Cloud UI. No one has found it. I know where it is. I didn't put it there. You can ask me about it, and I will not tell anyone. But it has been in front of, I don't know, people for months now, 2 or 3 months. So it's there. If anyone can find it, you can post in Slack at some point. So otherwise, I'm here to talk about 2 fun things, and I don't know how to clicker. Autocomplete. So this is a thing that, as a software engineer, I rely on all the time. And we're happy that we can bring something sort of close to it and very specific for DBT to the Cloud IDE. And something that Nate mentioned before is rebuilding kind of the IDE has let us unlock some use cases that we just couldn't quite get to before. And so one of these is we have the manifest, which tells us a ton of stuff about your DBT project. So in this case, we can understand the models you have, the sources, your macros, environment variables that are set in DBT Cloud. And so you'll see here in the GIF, which I wish we could pause because I wanted to talk about some. You'll just catch them on the loop as they go through. But for refs, we have your model names. For sources, you'll see here that you're picking kind of the source itself, and then we can filter that list on the second one to just the tables that are there. Macros are an interesting case where if it's in the manifest, we can tell you about it when you just jump into the Ginger block. But if the macro is fully documented, you'll see here with sense to dollars that we also can kind of put those snippets in there for you for the arguments based on what type they are, and kind of give you some extra info about how to kind of call them. And then environment variables are what you would be setting in the DBT Cloud UI. And so now really just like, I think helps cut back on forgetting what something's called, having to copy paste things around. And the last one that you'll see here is it also lets us now use the manifest to kind of sort of like lint in a way, but it's not like the same as full linting that we would talk about in software engineering. But if you misspell like a model name or something, which hopefully autofill means you do that less, we can actually warn you about it and kind of give you a quick fix based on what we think maybe you might be referencing. Yep. And then diff view. So this is a thing that like I depend on all the time when I'm working because I frequently forget what I've changed. I leave like weird notes for myself and like breadcrumbs through all the files. I commit it, then I have to go back and remove it. So this is something I use a lot for like just checking what have I done here and like reverting things that I don't want to commit and just for generally having a better idea of what I'm about to kind of push up. So I think Nate had the dates shared, but these are coming very, very soon to the beta users and then GA right after that. So.
Yeah, I'll share dates in a second.
Cool. And back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me turn this off. OK. I'm on, right? OK. So up next, I also like to introduce one more person. Well, 1 second. The next feature we want to talk about is a code formatter, which is an ability to format your code automatically from the IDE. And what this is I'm actually quite excited about this one. It's the first extension that we want to introduce in the Cloud IDE. We know that there's a lot of tools and extensions that the community has built that would be very useful to have in the Cloud IDE. And we're hoping that this is the first of many. So we'd like to introduce the code formatter through SQL format. And all you have to do is simply click the format button, and it will format your files with SQL formatter. So to talk a little bit about that, I'd like to invite Ted Conbeer on the stage to talk about his work on SQL formatter. There you go.
Thanks, Nate. Hi, everyone. I'm Ted. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Privacy Dynamics. Privacy Dynamics is a data anonymizer for the modern data stack. So if you have PII in your DBT dev environments, or if you're a healthcare company and you want to do analytics on de-identified data, come talk to me. I'd love to tell you about how we can help you do that. But really, I'm here today to talk to you about my side project, SQL Format. So my journey with DBT started actually 5 years ago. I hired Fishtown Analytics to spin up our Redshift cluster when I was working at Makespace in my previous employer. And they forced me to use this little tool that they were building called DBT. And I've been a devotee ever since. And so I really, in many ways, DBT has changed the path of my career, and I owe a lot to DBT Labs and to the broader DBT community. So really, thank you all so much. This is my little kind of love letter to DBT and my way of trying to give something back. I started working on SQL Format last August. I took about 6 months off between jobs and wanted a little side project that I could use to become a better software engineer in Python. And so what SQL Format does is it formats your DBT files so you don't have to. If any of you are familiar with Black in Python, it's a very similar kind of paradigm. I ripped off a lot from them. But effectively, it works with your Jinja templated SQL files. It will actually format the SQL around your Jinja as well as the Jinja tags and blocks themselves. It's super fast, it's easy to use. It'll prevent you from having arguments about formatting in your code reviews. It works with DBT Core as a pip installable CLI that also works great in CI/CD. And as of today, it's integrated into DBT Cloud through the new IDE and the format button that Nate showed you. So I'm really excited about this. We support all of the major kind of SQL dialects, and I could talk your ear off about everything. I'd love to point you to SQLformat.com, which is kind of the home for this project. From there, you can go to GitHub, start the repo, open an issue. Yeah, you can also find me in the DBT community Slack. You can DM me, or there's a new tools SQL Format channel. So. Nate, thank you. Isaac and David and Winnie and everybody else who worked on this, thanks so much for the opportunity today. And everybody, I look forward to talking to you more about SQL Format later. Thanks.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ted. So I'm very excited about this one. Please make sure to check out SQL Formatter as well as to contribute to the project. OK. I think that's it on the 5 features that we have. Up next, the last thing that we want to do today is a demonstration of how this all comes together, right? And how you would actually build DBT code on the IDE. So we would do that through the following. So with this, we are going to go through a DBT project that is coffee shop data and try to understand how a store performs over time. So to start, you want to look at the file tree, try to understand open files, maybe look at the MART models, staging models, and so on and so forth. In this case, you can look through the files as needed that in an existing project already. You can look at the lineage, check out the contents of the file. You can also open up the files as needed. But the better way to actually understand the project is through the docs. So there's a link to docs. IDE generates doc when you run your DBT docs generate. Through here, you can see the models that exist in your project. Right now, you can see 2 MART models and 6 staging models, as well as a macro that we'll come back to in a second. You can also click the lineage graph to see the full DAG. Right there, this is a pretty straightforward DAG. There are 6 sources in green, pointing to 6 staging models, pointing to 2 MART models, orders and customers. Then back into the IDE. So you might want to try to understand the project a little bit more. So let's open up a MART model. Let's check out orders. We did the file picker right there. And to understand the model itself, what data is fueling it, so we can click the preview button, during which we'll connect to your underlying data warehouse and preview the data. This is a pretty straightforward data model. Each row is an order, unique order. You can see the order total, tax, the date, as well as count of food, count of drinks, items, and so on and so forth. So pretty familiar data. Cool. And then you might want to navigate up and down the DAG to see other files. So in this case, you can double-click on staging orders to see the orders model, or through the breadcrumb to other files, such as staging locations. Previewing again, there are, when this shows up, a total of 5 different locations, store locations that exist in this your database. We also want to check out the product. There's a total of, I think, 5 Jaffles, if you know what Jaffles is, and 5 beverages in here. OK. Going through the code, you also notice that this one part of the code that is not that efficient. We actually have a macro for this. This is simply converting cents to dollar. We have a macro that is called cents to dollar that will take in a column and divide it by 100. Right? In this case, you can go back to the staging models and edit this by using our autocomplete feature. So we're going to use autocomplete of cents to dollar. And you can see that you can enter the price and precision as needed to replace this column. We'll be doing the same thing. I think there's a dot right here, which indicates that the file is not saved. Upon saving, this should change into an M, which stands for modified, as well. We'll also introduce other indicators as well. I believe there's other models that will be doing the same thing. So replacing these cents to dollars data columns with the macro. There you go. I think that's the last one. OK. So in addition to replacing all these models, now you should see there's 3 models that you've edited. You might want to actually also see how this macro compiles into. So if you click the compile button, you can see the code that this would actually be used in your data warehouse. In this case, the macro cents to dollar convert your file into your column name divided by 100, as you saw earlier. Right? So the IDE allows you to interact with it and see the actual code that's being run. OK, up next, we actually want to create a model. So let's close all the files, open up a new file, and start typing out our new data model. We want to understand performance for each location per month. We'll pull up our ref function. Again, with autocomplete, you can choose the data model that you want. I've already pre-filled this. I believe with the full code that I want. And note that this file is a little ugly right now. The indentation is off. There's spacing everywhere. So you can use the format button with SQL format to reformat the file with one button. Pretty straightforward. And then finally, you can save the file as, choose the location you want. This is the MART model, and create the file accordingly. OK. And then finally, you can review the DAG that you have. At this point, note that the file is denoted as a U, which is untracked, so a new file that has been added. In addition to changing the models, though, you would also want to add some documentation to this. So we'll move to a YAML file, the model's YAML file. Right now, there's a customer's model as well as an orders model. So we'll do the same thing and add documentation for this new data model. There you go. In this case, we're adding some tests here as well for not null and unique for this one column, the location ID. OK, so upon that, we'll save the file. Let's now test it out. We want to see if this actually works out the way that we expect it to. So you can click Build. Using the Build button, you can build things up and downstream or common DBT commands. In this case, we'll use build upstream and downstream, which allows you to run the DBT build command with selecting this file with the plus on both sides, up and downstream. OK. And let's fast forward this up in a second. There you go. We find that this build failed. We wonder why. So let's go into the logs. We'll see that there's a failure in tests for uniqueness. The location ID was not unique. So we want to try to understand why that's the case. Let's go back to the data model itself. And we'll preview the data. So try to understand what the data actually looks like. So using the preview, you notice here that this is actually unique location month data. So each row is a unique location and month. And for Brooklyn, different months, as well as for New Orleans, different months. So what are we going to do with it? The best practice here is probably to create a new surrogate key for both of these columns combined. I got lazy, so I just deleted the test. And hopefully, which will make the test, the build succeed. We'll go back, let's build downstream. So building from where we failed forward. OK. This one, so now we're rebuilding just locations plus. OK, fast forward. This one succeeded. And that's it. We're done with building up a new file, a data model. So, I typically do this, probably not the best practice if you have a large project, but I rebuild the entire project every time just because I want to make sure I get the latest things. In this case, the build succeeded. Nothing else showed up that you weren't expecting. So with the 5 file changes you have on the top left, we'll now make a commit. So we'll click Commit and Push. You can put some commit notes up there, and then click Commit Changes to your Git provider. In this case, we'll be committing to GitHub. And the final step after you make a commit is then you can create a PR, a pull request, to get other people to review your code before you merge it to production. So in here, you can see there's one commit with 5 files changed. And you see all the files that we just created just now. All right, I think that's a wrap on how this all comes together in the Cloud IDE, so how you would build and edit within the Cloud IDE. Next slide. There you go. OK. Wait, next slide. There you go. OK, so when does this become available? Today, we have, in blue, this is what most users see, while in red is what beta users see. Today, you can access the classic IDE, and beta users can access the new IDE. By the end of next week, the new IDE will be generally available, so all of you should have access to the new IDE, while with the beta features will be available, additional features, including diff view, formatter, autocomplete, and dark mode are available for beta users only. And that should launch generally available 3 to 4 weeks later. So if you're interested in testing out these features, sign up for beta. There's a QR code right there, as well as a link to beta. OK, how am I on time? I am exactly on time. Good for me. This is the most important slide, really. I want to give a huge, huge, huge shout out to all the people on this slide without whom we would not be here today. This team has worked really hard over the past few months to get this out the door. So I want to thank all the engineers, designers, product, data team, and everyone involved in the project. In addition to these folks, though, this is really not a engineering and product team only project. There are so many other people. There's docs team, there's community team, there's so many people involved, so support team, SA, everyone who tests internally. So thank you everyone who have helped work with me through this past few quarters. And what's next? Final slide. Performance and reliability are our #1 priority, so we'll continue to invest our time in making the IDE better in terms of performance and reliability. But beyond that, I know there's a lot of things that people are interested in. This is not a roadmap. This is more of a dump of things that we're thinking about. From linting, from VS Code, more complex Git workflow, CLI. There's a lot of things that we really want to get out there for you to access. So if you're interested in any of these topics, come talk to me. I'm more than happy to discuss this with you. So with that, thank you for joining us today. And that's a wrap.
Thank you very much, Nate. Seriously, thank you very much. Want to go ahead and remind everyone, any questions and comments for Nate, go ahead and take it to the Slack channel, Coalesce Developing on DBT Cloud. There's already a lot of great chatter in there and questions that you can look forward to. And we just want to say thank you to everyone. Thanks for everyone online. Great conversation from y'all as well. And we appreciate everyone joining. So have a good rest of your day.